Great. Well, now that I guess you could call it elective surgeries, plastic surgeries are more and more prevalent.
Yeah.
Should women who have had breast reduction surgery get a mammogram before age 40?
Not necessarily. I mean, again, it depends on their risk. So, because the risk of breast cancer less than 40 is not high. And so, I certainly wouldn't say as a blanket thing, if you're going to have breast reduction surgery, everybody should have a mammogram first. But if you have a high risk, if you have a strong family history or something like that, maybe you might want to, but I wouldn't do it as a general rule.
And when you say strong family history, how is that defined?
First degree relative, at least, mother, sister, daughter, father, because men can get breast cancer. Second degree relative is an aunt or a grandmother, not so much. So first degree relative. And if you have more than one first degree, if you have a mother and a sister, or a mother and a grandmother, or then you start thinking a little more like the gene, like there might be something genetic.
Got it.
Something else we've been hearing a lot about lately, why do you think premenopausal African American women are at higher risk of developing breast cancer?
Good question. So what's interesting is that if you look at the incidence of breast cancer, at the cases of breast cancer, the incidence is the same around the world up till age 50. It goes up and it stops at age 50. And then in the Western countries, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Western Europe, it keeps going up. And so the average age of breast cancer in Caucasian women in this country is 64. And the average age of breast cancer in African Americans is closer to 48. The average age in China is around 48. And Japan, where they live a long time, looks like China. So this is partly hormone replacement therapy. These are the countries that took hormone replacement therapy. And we know that increases it. They're also the countries that do screening mammograms. And one of the problems with mammograms are that a third of the cancers found on mammogram would do nothing if you didn't find them. So not every cancer you find on mammogram is a bad one. But we can't tell which one, so we treat everyone like it's a bad one.
So they're diagnosed.
So they're diagnosed, as breast cancer. But we don't, because we can't tell. So, and then some of it might be late first childbirth, and some of it might be lifestyle, and there's some other Western things we could throw in there. So the African American women get the young breast cancer. They don't as much get the older breast cancer. And the younger breast cancer tends to be more aggressive. There's 5 or 6 different kinds of breast cancer. And some of them are more aggressive and some of them are less aggressive. And they have more of a tendency to get the aggressive ones. So part of it may be that they don't have as much access to care, but it may be as much biology as it is access to care, that they're getting ones that are more aggressive. And there's a lot of research going on this right now. And there's also a lot of research in the Army of Women. So we very much want African American and Hispanic women to join the Army of Women, because we don't want to, extrapolate from a bunch of old white women, for everybody. It's just, that's not going to work. We've done that for too long, and it really doesn't work. So if you want to be in this, and this is the perfect situation. People are often reluctant about being in research, but you get to choose here which research you want to be in. So you stay in control. So it's a perfect situation where really what you're signing up for is to hear about it, not to necessarily, and then you can decide whether you want to do it or not.
And some of the research that you would participate in could be a questionnaire, it could be donating breast milk, it could be a saliva sample, or biopsy.
Absolutely, or an interview. There was one study that was done that they were looking at whether young women were being told about fertility options, because this is the flip side that we've been talking about, sort of the pregnancy side. But once you get chemotherapy, you're thrown into menopause. So if you get breast cancer at 35 or 40 and you haven't had your kids yet, it's sort of like, oops, now what am I going to do? And so there are options that you can do. You can, depending on whether you've got a partner or not, you can freeze embryos, they can take eggs, they've got there are things they can do. So they wanted to see whether everybody was getting that information, and they interviewed Caucasian women, And then, but they suddenly realized they didn't have any African American women in the study. So they called us, the Army of Women. We put it out there, and we got them the women they needed. So the study actually showed across the board what was happening, not just in one group. So it was really showed you how important it is that we make sure we get everybody in there, not just, one group.
Right. And I actually have a friend who was diagnosed and treated for breast cancer couple of years ago, and she just got married, and they actually froze their embryos. So what are your chances of getting pregnant after the treatment?
This is a good question, because this is a study that you can't really do. You can't then randomly say to people who are after their treatment for breast cancer, now you get pregnant, you don't. You get pregnant, you don't. I mean, life just doesn't work that way.
Right.
So, but when they do look at the people who have gotten pregnant after breast cancer, they do not see an increase in recurrence. Now, so it depends obviously very much on the cancer and all. In my clinical experience, the one group I got really nervous about, and this is a totally anecdotal, I had 2 women who got cancer while pregnant, and then they decided to get pregnant again, and they both got recurrences. Now, 2 women are not enough to say, but it did make me feel that whatever pregnancy does to their breast was probably not something you want to do. So I'd be more nervous in that group. But we have not shown that it's necessarily a bad thing to get pregnant again, to get pregnant afterwards.
Great. Well, looks like we're running out of time, but one last question for you. What do you think is the biggest misconception people have about breast cancer?
I think the biggest misconception is the idea that early detection always works. I think we've done such a good job selling the notion that if you just find your cancer early, you'll be cured. And actually, that was based on old science, where we thought the cancer just grew at a steady rate and we could just prevent it from getting out and sort of slam the door. But there's 5 or 6 different kinds of breast cancer. They live in a neighborhood of tissue, and all this interacts. Some cancers are so aggressive that you can do everything right and still it'll have spread. And some cancers are so slow growing, it doesn't matter when you find them, they're never going to do anything anyway. And then we can shift things in about 30%. So I think we get this idea sometimes that if I just get my mammogram, I'll be home free, almost as if a mammogram was prevention. It's not prevention. It's finding cancers that are already there. And the idea that if we just did enough mammograms or enough x-rays, we could find every cancer early and everybody would be cured, just is not true in terms of the biology. So that's why I think finding the cause is probably the most important thing we can do. And if the scientists aren't going to, do it, we'll just get an army of women to do it. And we'll show them, and we'll find the answer, and we'll take care of it.
Great.
3.
Thanks everybody for joining us, and as we mentioned, Dr. Love will answer all of your questions. If we didn't have time within this hour, she's going to stay here and answer them, and you can find all of your answers on lifetimemoms.com.